Hello everybody, welcome back to another episode of Anabaptist Perspectives. I'm here in York, Pennsylvania with Keeshon, Washington, and you've been very involved in ministry in an inner city setting. And one thing I'm particularly interested is making disciples in cities, especially from your perspective as now being an Anabaptist. So in your experience here in the city, what are some spiritual walls that you've run up against that the church needs to deal with, that need addressed?
Here's a big one, and it's underrated, and I think it's, if I ever write a book someday,
by the way.
it is going to be the number one in my eyes so far. I mean, maybe 10 years from now I'll have a different number one, but it's just so hard to forgive parents who aren't serving the Lord. It is the hardest thing I ever done in my entire life was forgiving my parents. Learning to love them over again, learning to remembering, think of all the things you remember from your childhood that are good. I'm sure there's bad, but thinking back and having fond memories. And, when a parent passes away, you spend time sitting with your siblings, laughing and crying of the good times. And some of these kids don't even have the father to do that. And in my case, I had a dad that loved me, and I definitely had some things to be grateful for. But most of what I went through was just pain, and not knowing the eternal state of my father, and realizing just how much that hurt me. And I think that's what woke up in me the realization that, wow. Verses that tell us, if you don't forgive others their trespasses, I will not forgive you. That stuff is so serious. We don't take it serious enough. And so I've encountered, I was at a kids camp this past summer. I was the speaker, and it was Heart to Heart ministry, which is a great ministry. I love Heart to Heart. And they had me as their speaker, and I had several conversations that night with both girls and boys. And one of the girls came up to me and asked me, how can you forgive your father? How can you do that? That makes no sense. After all the stuff that happened. And I just saw the pain in her eyes, and I know that pain. I've had that pain. I still do. And then I told her, because my salvation depended on it. If I didn't, I'd be just as vulnerable as he was. And to see what seemed impossible to her, and even felt impossible to me, I'm ashamed to admit it. I just felt like, God, this is an impossible call. She's never going to know you. She's so much pain there. And God just reminded me, Keeshon, I'm greater than that pain. I really am. And so believing in that is hard for us, the missionaries, the people who have Jesus and are trying to see that actualized in their lives. It's hard for us to see, to imagine that so-and-so will actually know God. We have so many doubts, and they're normal doubts. There they are. But that is one obstacle that is massive. Anybody working in ministries would recognize it after not too long. And if they haven't, they should start asking around. So what's your relationship like with your father? Oh, I hate him. That's bad. Because with that, they'll be driven to hell. We are not giving enough care to enough importance to the theme of forgiveness in their journeys. I think it's where it starts and ends. Asking forgiveness from God is the essence of starting a relationship with him and committing to him. And then what God's going to start doing is saying, now that dad that you hate, you need to forgive him. And we're letting people skip that step. And I don't think God is. God hasn't let a single person on this earth not forgive. They need to do it. And we need to be vigilant. We need to come in with, it needs to be in our training programs as urban administrators. It needs to be emphasized, forgiveness of the fathers primarily, but also with the mothers. I think I forgave my father quicker than I did my mother. That's a necessary step in a relationship with God. And so that's the big one for me, is forgiveness. Not just fathers, but just anybody in their life. I've got a kid who comes in heated from a fight he got into at Bible club or whatever, and I'm like, have you forgiven him yet? I know where you're going with it. I know I got to forgive him or God won't forgive me. I'm like, yeah. So you ready to do that? And if he's not leaving that room until he does. Because I recognize the extreme importance of that. And those are my prayer items. Most of my prayer items are, God, will you help so-and-so forgive so-and-so? It's very specific because to me that is the ultimately what stands between joy and is Satan knows what he's doing. He is using hatred and a lack of forgiveness to tear apart lives. Not just the people who won't forgive, but the people who are not forgiven. I've made confessions to almost everyone in my life, and they're big, they're hard, and there's no feeling worse than not being forgiven. And so, a lack of forgiveness is to me the biggest sin that I see. Another one is I talked about a humble spirit coming from us. I tend to be hard on them too. Are you really committed to God, or are you just saying that to come to fellowship meals and youth activities or whatever? Like, are we just your peer group and you're just going with the flow? Because if Mennonites can do it, they can do it too. In fact, I think they do it better. They fit in better than off-roading youth in our churches. They know how to act. They're rappers. They act well, and so they will act their way into the kingdom if they can. And so, I'm not suggesting people go and test that, because that can be dangerous. What if they really are sincere and you're not putting trust and faith in them? But one of the things that I do is I hold them responsible for forgiving their father. And I say, look, you can beat around the bush all you want, you can be in pain all you want, but you need to forgive. It needs to happen. And I can't give it to you. And saying that, Jesus is the one that can give you the peace to do it. But we're not going to pretend like I don't want you to do that. And so we won't go long before I bring it up again.
So as someone who spent a lot of time in inner city ministry, what are some needs and observations you've had that we as Anabaptists could be addressing in the expansion of God's kingdom, especially in an urban setting?
Yeah. So I mentioned the forgiving of the fathers, helping with that. I didn't give much about how to help. And so there are some methods that we can use that I don't see used very often. And we'll see how many of them come to my mind. One of them is, Mennonites like to drive. They drive a lot of places. Some of them are drivers, right? And driving to a doctor's office or, an hour away or whatever, they can travel, right? And so if you're going to go somewhere, call up somebody from the city and say, hey, you want to go somewhere with me? And you don't even need to take them out to eat or spend money on them. Giving them things does so little. I'm not going to say it does nothing, or taking them out to eat can do so little. And really it's about quality time, which needs to be trained, needs to be something that you both come to like, right? Because it can be awkward at first, like, so are we going to McDonald's, or what, did you bring money? No, I guess not. But we need to work on developing that. But it's beautiful to be able to call up a kid and just say, do you want to chill? And once you're there, you've gotten really far. If you can get a guy to come and just talk to you in a world where video games and videos and movies are the most important thing in their lives, then you've gotten somewhere. And it's not that we don't do the movies and we don't do the video games, but we don't do the snacks or whatever, or the pizza parties. It's that, I can call him up and I can include him in my life. And I've had a number of guys say, you're basically my brother. And I'm like, well, I'm treating you like one. I mean, you're going along with me to these events and these things. And so that's one way that we can meet a need, because most of these guys are bored. The guys come over every Thursday, and the reason they're motivated to do that is because they have nothing better to do. These video games wear out. At most they're fun for a couple months, and then they're bored until the next one comes out. And who is there to be with them when they're bored? It's either poor influences or more media, YouTube videos and whatever. YouTube's big right now. Getting into hours of YouTube. And if we can just be with them, whether it's just getting them away from that, or it's helping them to use it well, giving them Christian resources or whatever, better resources than what they have, spending that time with them is what they ultimately want. It's what they want from their friends, what they get from their friends. And if we're going to be there for them, we need to be available, and we need to pursue them. So I hold of high importance being there for urban youth. I also hold of high importance pursuing them. And we are not always very good at pursuing. And a phone call and a okay, they didn't want to come is not pursuing. I've harassed guys that I care about. And I don't do it with everybody. That'd be kind of weird. I don't want to be pushy everywhere with everybody I know. But there are some guys that I'll basically say we're hanging out. And we're gonna hang out. And we do. And I actually text one of them and I said, "You getting tired of me?" He's like, "No." And they want that attention. They want that time. And if we can find ways to give them that time, it'll be really good. Other ways we can do it, we'll go on week-long trips with our friends from church, and we'll go on vacations with our friends. We'll go on road trips with our friends. Take a group of guys from the city. Take them to a cabin. Give them an experience they haven't had before. And I don't like the fresh air concept. I do, but I don't. I love being here in the city. I don't like bears or anything. I don't like being out in the middle of nowhere. And I don't want to force them to do that either. Although I will say nature was one of the biggest things that made me commit to Jesus fully. I was a Christian for a while, but nature reinstilled some fire for me. And it hurts to say that as a city kid, because there's a lot of people who like hearing me say that. Like, see, nature is important, hunting is important. And I'm like, sure, yeah. But I really like to see them out of their environment, not because of what they're experiencing there, but because they're away from their environment. They're able to get out of what for me was an environment of drugs, and this is not a good way to live.
Yeah.
And the fact that I had someone who, when he wasn't inviting me, I could go out and, hey, I have homework I need to do on your computer. Can I come to your house? It was a lie, and he knew it was a lie. Right? It was all made up just to get over to Austin's house and hang out with him. And he wanted that as much as I did, because he knew that it was his way of loving me. And so the cliche is love is spelled out Time. I don't like cliches, but it is true no matter how cliche it is. It's still true that the more time we invest, the more likelihood we are to get back that attention and that result that we want.
It's about relationship, not just the perfect program or doing things a certain way.
Yeah.
It's building those relationships, discipleship, really. Yeah.
Efficiency is only going to get you so far. At the end of the day, you really do have to invest, and that's going to be painful. So I write, and one of the things that I've been writing and stuff I'm planning to release soon is you're going to make them cry, because you're a person, you're human, and you come into this with some flaws too. And so you're going to fail them. And I think a true sign that you've gotten somewhere is when they make you cry. They lighten you, they cuss you out. There's something going on there where there's conflict, because friendships are tried by conflict. You know, your closest friends are going to be the ones that you went through some things with. And especially in an urban context. I know there are some Mennonites that have just been friends forever from church, and this is not a whole lot of conflict. But I also know and have confirmed through a lot of people that true friendship, the deepest friendships, are going to be tried by fire. Yeah. And we hope that they will come to know Christ, and that they will be our brothers in church sitting next to us. And that they will be with us in the brotherhood, fighting the fight that we fight. And we can start investing in that relationship even before they're Christians by saying, hey, if you're being an idiot, I'm going to call you out for being an idiot. And I get called strict sometimes here in school, but I think eventually students learn to know me as just someone who will tell you how it is. And if I think that you're being annoying to the other students, I will tell you that's what you're doing. And I think that honesty can create conflict, but it ultimately brings about love. Because even though we were mad at each other, we were still here for each other. I found God actually uses that. I've been on week-long text fasts from guys where I'm like, okay, we're done talking for a while. Or they do it to me. We're not talking. They're mad at me, or I'm mad at them. Whatever it is. And I'll find that in that time they needed me the most. And sometimes they'll actually call me and they'll say, "Hey, my grandma just died," and all of a sudden all of the conflict dies with it, and I'm there for them. And I think that is a testament that. In the hardest times of our lives, our friends have to be there, and the people who we care about have to be there. And that's what I enjoy doing is bearing burdens with them. They bear my burdens. I've shared with some of the guys I'm closest with. And preferably ones that have made commitments that can relate to the spiritual aspect of it. But I've shared too about the hard things I'm going through with my mother or my family, or adjusting to, I've had guys watch me become Mennonite, and they can't imagine how I did it or why I did it, but they've known the pressures and the tough things of that. And I think that those guys, having seen that, we have that bond that people wish for. And surprise, surprise, it comes through investment. It comes through, I'm here when you need me and you're here when I need you. Yeah. And at my dad's funeral, I had some guys there that I had invested in. And here they were investing in me now. And that's the culture. That's what people here do. They want to give and take. Truly, they do in their heart want to give and take. And we've built stereotypes to think that when you're working in the city, you better be ready to be stolen from, and you better be ready to just give, and never receive. And I think that that's our fault, not theirs. We are not willing to receive and to be loved. And the expression of love here in the city is different than what Mennonites are used to. But once you start to experience it, that's when they're most open to committing to the life that you want them to live. People who come in and preach Jesus to them and have not established a relationship are often on thin ice. And it doesn't mean they've sunken. It doesn't mean it's worthless. But they've already kind of discredited what you're going to say. And I don't like that. I discourage them from doing that. They'll say, so-and-so came tonight and he talked about this and this. And I'm like, you almost think like it was a joke. And they're like, well, and I don't like that. But the way to combat that is not just to say, oh, the city is this way, or wow, it's ruthless out here. Is to go head on with faith and love and say, okay, you guys You guys want love? I'm here. Let's go. So in my story, well, I'm not sharing a whole lot of it here, but in my story, the most impactful thing in my life, the thing that made me want to follow God, that introduced Jesus to me ultimately. I'd been in Bible school for several years, and I actually didn't know Jesus. So people who say, we got to stop doing urban ministry because people in America already have been exposed to the gospel. I'm like, well, is exposure what we want? Is it really just about exposure? Because I thought we were here to disciple and to baptize, and and all of a sudden now it's about exposure. I'm like, wow, if exposure was all we needed, we could win the world. That we just go out and do it, right? But really, it's tough. It's hard, and so, I get people, they're in conflict. I don't know if I want to come live in this city. I have friends who want to come teach here, but they're like, oh, living in a city. I'm like, yeah, I get it. I'm not gonna sugarcoat it with you. It's hard for people who haven't grown up in it. But the thing that changed my life was sitting at a supper table, and with the Shanks, the family I live with today. They're my family today, and they treated me like family. I sat down, and there was all kinds of food on the table. This was their leftover night, right? But to me, this was like a Disney movie. I couldn't believe it. And they were so friendly, and they acted very genuine. Like, it was almost like they weren't overdoing it. They weren't saying, you're a welcome guest. Here, let me take your coat. Like, it was almost kind of rude in some ways, the way that their kids were treating me. But I was a part of their family that night. And I left that night thinking, there's something about this family that I want. And I kind of thought maybe it'd be whiteness. Are they just white? Can I really be this? Am I going to have to sell out to be like them? I was confused at a young age. I was 12 years old. And so Austin invested in me. We had Bible studies, and I kept going back to their family. And the meal times have shaped me into what I am today. The meal times have made me want to know God. I found Jesus ultimately through a family investing in me like that. And I was at a conference one time. I won't say what conference, and I had shared my testimony there. And an older man who has 10, 15 children, Mennonites are prone to doing that. They have a lot of children. He told me he's not sure what he can do now that he has so many kids. He can only do so much. It's more about investing in their ministries. And I said, well, how many people, you live near a city and there's a ministry there in your church, how many times do you have them over for supper? Well, never. So you have all these kids that invest in this ministry, and they never have entered your home. These inner city youth have never actually come to your place. And we talked. He was very honest with me, and I appreciated his honesty. He talked about how he wants to keep his family safe, doesn't want to be influenced by the world. And I said, I understand that, and you can set that standard for your family if you want to. But the best way that you can invest in lives in the city right now as a father is teaching your children to bring them into your home and letting them see a family that loves each other. Now, your family has to love. There needs to be love there. And not every family is what we make it out to be. I understand that. But I'm fully convinced that is our greatest strength, is our families, is letting people into our homes, letting them see us, loving them like one of us. And yes, they're going to go home back to their real families, and they're going to experience what to them is like a personal hell. And that's unfortunate. But you're always welcome back here at the Yoder farm. You're always welcome back here. Ideally in the city, you're welcome back here. We call it the Shank Embassy. It's right there in the city, and people come in there all the time. Our doors are unlocked, and we get people not coming in all the time. And I was one of those people. And so as annoying as it is living in a home where there's always strangers, I was once one of those strangers. And I have not seen yet a ministry fully effective in discipling and bringing about converts that did not that they didn't have a chill spot, that the convert didn't have a place to go, and a family that invested in them. And so Mennonite families need to get their eyes open to the ministries around them, whether it be urban or non-urban. They need to open up their eyes to seeing that there is a whole realm of opportunity here that we're closed off to. We want to protect our families. We want to keep our homes private. We do it to our own churches. So one thing we do as a church, we do fellowship activities, and one of the goals is to invade each other's homes. The whole church is going to come to your house tonight that you probably can't fit 100 people in. We're going to do it anyway. And we're going to do your traditions. You're going to be in charge, and you're going to feed us, and we're going to be a part of your home. And what that does is it breaks this trend that I see in other churches where every home is sort of its own island. And we come in for church, and we go back to our islands. And that's not how it works here in the city. That's not how it should work, at least. And so they're going to be most receptive to the idea that I can come and visit you whenever I want. And we should thrive on that. We should love that. We should love when they come to see us. And if we're tiring, the best advice I have is to ask God for continued strength and say, Lord, help me to just love seeing them. Help me to love when they invade my personal space, because ultimately I want my space to be yours. And so if that's true, if you really want your house to be God's house, then let God bring people into your house. And I think that we've put up a wall and a restriction that has closed us off to a large percentile of ministry that we could be investing in. And I see it in the realm of urban ministry, but it could be just as great in suburban or rural places. People who just need a safe environment, need an example of a godly family. You know, Reagan, I had never sat down at a supper table before in my entire life until I met the Shanks.
Wow.
My family never ate together. Maybe Thanksgiving, but even at Thanksgiving, we all sat on different couches with the families. I had never sat down to eat a meal with a family before. And I've done it hundreds of times since with them. And I think, again, if I ever write a book, it's going to be about that supper time, those conversations and that experience. And so that's another way, another need that we need to address. You know, if I can be specific, suppers at your houses. Don't just go to parks. Those are good, but those aren't as to the point as you come into my place. And I've even seen people go into their homes, which isn't as easy, because then you have to disciple the whole family. But which is great if you can do it. But I think that we can start making huge cuts into Satan's vices in these cities, if we can, especially for those who live in the cities, open up your homes. You don't have to leave your door unlocked, but those guys can come into your home and eat food and just enjoy being a part of your family for an evening. And I think that shows Jesus in a way that preaching never can. It shows Jesus in a way that a Sunday school or a Bible club can't. It's saying, I want relationship with you. And when they accept that, they are probably aware they need to accept Jesus to do that too. And often they're willing to do it. They're saying, man, you've loved me like nobody else ever has. And so, okay, let's go. And that's what I told Austin. I'm like, if Jesus is what you have, bring it on. I didn't know what it meant. I didn't know that it meant I'd be becoming Mennonite. I didn't know that it meant that I'd be doing this. I didn't know that but whatever it was, whatever God called me to do, I was going to do it. And that's largely because of what Austin did for me, what the Shank family did in my life. And I just think of all the Yoder families and all of the Martin families, all the families out there that could be doing that for other people. And I don't hold it against them if they're not. But if they ask me what they could be doing, I think that's where they start. So yeah, I think that we need to make family ministry of high importance in our churches. But in order for that to happen, we have to break a norm in our churches that families are sort of on their own islands, and the church is a meeting place. And I would say what urban people need, we really want to reach them, we really want to adapt to help them, is we're just a community, and all of our homes are open to each other. And if they can come and be a part of that, then that's beautiful to them and to us. It makes us all happy too. And that, to me, is the most consistent expression of Christianity that we can give, is we are all here for each other. And so often, we're not. We just simply aren't. Yeah, I think that's what
Yeah, very good. Wow. Well, that was the last question I had. Thanks for sharing your story and ways that our people can creatively reach out to the world around us. That's really powerful. And I hope this inspires someone to go do the same. Yeah. Thank you, Keeshon.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Cheers.